I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like I walked into a circus.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Right, 25 minutes past 9 this morning. We have Phil Egan with us. Phil.
Morning, lads.
How are you?
All good.
I find it hard not to start at Man United, but actually, you know what? I'm not going to start at Man United. I'm going to start in this studio. I got laughed at for saying that Newcastle would finish ahead of Man United. I said this, I'd say last March or April this season. I said that next season, I bet you Man United are going to finish behind Newcastle. I got laughed at in this very studio. No one's laughing now, Phil. No one's laughing now.
No, nobody's laughing right now. Well, the only laughing people are doing is at Manchester United and what a shambles they are. But Newcastle have started okay. They obviously won on the opening weekend. They were quite lucky to come out of Brighton with a draw, but that's why
I'm not saying they're brilliant.
That's why they signed Nick Pope to make saves.
Yeah, and I still think that there's a bit of activity to be done. So this morning news breaks that they've asked to be kept informed about 4 players at Chelsea: Callum Hudson-Odoi, Conor Gallagher, Armando Broja and Christian Pulisic.
Can I just a point of information here? If they end up making a signing like this, you're not allowed to do the victory lap because
I am.
This is a transformative. The whole point that people laughed you out of studio is that Newcastle United didn't do the business that maybe people expected.
No, that was back in March and April. I was saying this.
Money, though.
Sorry, of course, and also you're right. I mean, we're 2 games into the season, so it's all finished.
Well, those 4 players you mentioned, I think the one that Newcastle should sign would be Broja. They've obviously got Callum Wilson, they've got Chris Wood, but he would give them something different as well and a bit of depth because Wilson has had injury problems and Chris Wood I just don't think is good enough. I still firmly believe that when they signed Wood, they were signing him to score a few goals, but they're also saying to Burnley, we're taking one of your boys away.
It was good strategy in the short term, and he's a top 10, as in between 8th and 12th striker. Yeah. But Broja might be like a top 6 striker.
Well, the ceiling is
much
far
higher. Yeah. And look, you know, next season they'll have a Conference League campaign or something to go through. Potentially.
Possibly, yeah.
You wouldn't be surprised if they end up in the Conference League. That's like the level they're at.
They're definitely on the way up, and we knew this was going to happen anyway. Like for fair idea that in a few years, right, it's going to be Newcastle and City going for the Premier League title.
Surely you'd have Conor Gallagher ahead of Armando Broja, though, would you, in terms of a player from that list you'd like to have in your team? I know you're talking
probably thinking as well of what Chelsea are willing to do as well, whether they're willing to allow Gallagher to leave. But you know, he's getting cameos off the bench. It's very hard for him when he got a season under his belt at Palace last season and he was so good and got into the England squad.
But Pulisic could potentially be easier to prize away from Chelsea then, because I guess they've possibly assessed what he can do. I know he's had his troubles with injury.
Yeah, he's still only 23.
Christian Pulisic.
Yeah.
And Hudson-Odoi, again, a lot of talent, but never really recovered from that Achilles injury. When I say never recovered, just hasn't been able to get a run of games consistently, and he's been tried in a few different positions with Tuchel, including that right wing back position, which I know it's wing back. It's a hybrid position with Tuchel, the way he changes his tactics, which you would have seen from Loftus-Cheek the other day. But yeah, he's probably the most likely, I'd say, of the 4 to probably be loaned out, or whether he goes on a permanent deal. But
it's hard to know. I think Chelsea at some point are going to start having to balance the books. If the Fofana signing, Fofana looks like he's going to try and push that through, right?
Yeah, you can see why he'd want it, because it doesn't look great for Brendan Rodgers right now that the club are letting players leave but they're not signing players, and Fofana is thinking, you know, if I play for Chelsea, I'm going to be playing for a better team
and I'll be rich.
Well, I'm sure his bank balance will look a bit healthier, all right. And do you know what? I wondered with Fofana, obviously we saw how much potential he had, then he had the injury. He's back in now, and I thought maybe he might stick with Leicester for another season because he needs to get back playing regular football. But he could also be thinking, if anything I've learned over the last few years, that football is so unpredictable. When you're at the top of your game, you can get struck down with a bad injury. So he'd be thinking now is the time to move. And also if he wants to maybe get into that France World Cup squad, this could be the time to move. And he could be thinking as well, Brendan Rodgers mightn't be around for much longer.
No, it's hard to know what's going to happen at Leicester. There's a possibility that they sell him and or Maddison and they sign and they have a lot of replacements who are ready to go, who are nearly as good because their record in the transfer market has been sensational.
Yeah, it has. But then, like, what's going to happen to Tielemans? And like they have signed some good players, but they actually, like, say they signed Daka, and we all thought, yeah, this is a brilliant signing, but just didn't get going last season. Now he's still very young, and it takes time to adapt to a new league, and they kind of showed that they were still very reliant on Jamie Vardy. But
is it ridiculous that I hope that they sign Andrew Omobamidele to replace Wesley Fofana if he goes? That there's like
that's not a bad shout.
You know,
I mean,
Premier League experience, similar age profile, talent on the ball, would fit in the team. Like,
he was. Nathan Collins had been linked with Leicester as well.
Yeah, which would have been a good move, but they needed to sell him first.
There are two teams that play three at the back, which at the moment that's where Stephen Kenny is. He's playing three at the back.
It's true. Now Dean Smith was playing two at the back last night, according to my live score app. Anyway, I didn't see anything.
Well, I mean, they've kind of they didn't start the season great, but they obviously picked things up last night.
I think Dean Smith's a good manager. I think he'll turn things around for them. Anthony Gordon looks like he's ready to force a move as well. So if they sign, big ifs, right? So if they sign Fofana, that's going to be 75, 80 million, right? If they sign Gordon, that's another 45, 50 million. That's another 120 million. Yeah. They're going to have to sell some of those players to balance the books.
Yeah.
Just for financial fair play.
Yeah. I like financial fair play. It exists, but I don't really believe it. So I'm sure there's always a way around it. And
like the tooth fairy.
Yeah. So if they do, I'd be surprised if Anthony Gordon left. Maybe Everton would be thinking this is too good to turn down, this offer. But Anthony Gordon, he's already a bit of a hero in that Everton team. He's as bad as last season was. He was one of the bright sparks. He was one of the positives, a local lad that came in and he made a real difference. It would be a big move for him.
It's a lot of cash, and they'd be able to buy a couple of players extra and just get a bit of depth.
Yeah. Well, see, I just think Everton are in so much trouble. They need as much quality in that squad as they can get.
Yeah, but do you get two players who are good, who can play, and you double the amount of minutes you're going to get from them instead of Anthony Gordon? And
you bring in players. Maybe you bring in players that have Premier League experience, but it's such a risk to bring in new players that don't have Premier League experience, and you're basically counting on them to hit the ground running. Whereas Gordon now has got his bit of Premier League experience.
No, it's fair. So Adrian Rabiot not going to happen. You were like, this wasn't a good deal in the first place in terms of like you didn't think he was good enough really to influence the team.
No, like I said, he was an improvement on McTominay and Fred, but again, as I said, that's never really a good starting point for any argument to bring in a player.
And you accurately predicted that the mother issue would be important in this, and so it has. Apparently the agent has said no, I'm not getting enough money.
It's not a great start if you haven't even joined the club and there's issues around wage structures. So you want players to come to your club to play because they want to be there, and look, they deserve to be paid what they're worth, but I've always felt with someone like Rabiot, he believes he's worth a lot more. He believes he's a better player than he is. I think he's a fine player.
Yeah, but there's multiple trouble with the wage issues at Manchester United, where he'd be coming in and he'd be underpaid according to like what, say, Jesse Lingard might have got paid in the past, or whoever, and that whole poison is in the club and needs to be extracted before you can fix it.
There's so much to fix at the club.
Get rid of Ronaldo now, irrespective of whether or not you have a replacement.
See, that's the thing. If you were ask me should they get rid of Ronaldo, I would say yes. But if you also said how could you see Ronaldo staying, I would be if they haven't got anyone else.
Well, it might be chicken and egg. You have to get rid of him before you can get somebody else in.
When he's telling us we've got to wait a couple of weeks.
Yeah, what's that about?
To find out the truth, and I find that a bit strange. Does that mean that he's leaving, and then when he leaves he'll say, right, here's what really happened? But
they were not very good.
Yeah. And look,
what truth bombs?
Ronaldo was thinking, I'm at the end of my career. I'm an absolute legend of the game.
Yeah.
I deserve better. I don't want to be playing with some of these chumps. I'm looking around going, I don't need this. I should be playing on a Tuesday and Wednesday night in the Champions League, not Thursday night.
But is he Gene Hackman at the end of the Western with the gun in his face going, I don't deserve this. Dessert's got nothing to do with it. And Clint Eastwood blows his head off. Is that what's happening here?
Possibly. He's
Eric
thinking...
Ten Hag is Clint Eastwood.
Well, do you know what? If Ten Hag is going to make this thing work at Manchester United, I always felt that he had to do it without Ronaldo and start from scratch.
Yeah, I would agree.
And build up.
I actually think if there's an offer on the table for Marcus Rashford at the moment, go on. Like, you don't need him. And he's not going to work for you.
Well, do you know what? It's such a disappointment because 3 years ago I was thinking Rashford could be a sensational player and have such a bright future ahead of him, but like many players at Manchester United, it just hasn't worked out for them. But there's a talent there, but so far we haven't seen it at the start of this season. And just even things like he's coming short for the ball. And Rashford, when you watch Rashford, the best version of Rashford is there's space in behind defenders and he runs into it, and you can't live with that.
Casemiro, a good signing?
It'd be a great signing for United, but why is he leaving Real Madrid, the Spanish champions, the European champions, Champions League football? They've signed a couple of young midfielders. He's thinking, I probably won't have to do as much running as I've had to do. I won't have to play every game, and I've got a World Cup to look forward to.
So you can't see this deal happening?
I'd be very surprised. I mean, if you're Casemiro or you're his representatives, it makes zero sense. But
the brand is big. I played for Real Madrid. I played for Man United.
I think this is just like complete notions.
I think it's...
Like what are Manchester United doing? Like the headlines say, eyeing up Casemiro, considering £50 million move for Casemiro, says Sky Sports. Like what?
Well,
Manchester United considering Casemiro?
Real, not very rich, like compared to with what they used to be, that you can get players. I just wonder, so Varane came and Varane never plays because he's injured.
Yeah.
Casemiro plays. He's fit. He's good. He's durable.
Yeah.
He would actually be a proper...
No,
he's an asset to Real Madrid, let alone Manchester. Why would he drop down so many levels to
his contract 2025? I know obviously that adds to the value of the transfer fee, but I just think it'd be madness if you're Casemiro.
Like the thing is about the whole Manchester United situation is that it's got a lot worse from 3-4 years ago. Like people are still dealing in the idea that Manchester United are a great club that are on poor times. They're a terrible club. Like they're in a terrible place.
They're going to finish below Newcastle.
Like possibly, like this idea that they're still a big club that are chasing past glories. Like those glories are a long, long time ago. I could buy that argument when like Angel Di Maria was coming.
Yeah.
Like, but in 2022, I just don't see this at all. That ship has long sailed.
Yeah. The more time goes by, the
further they get.
And that's it. And they have to accept it before they fix it. And sometimes I don't think they have accepted it, but like there's no doubt like they're a massive club and the brand is huge and all, but what's going on in the club from the ownership to I don't know what their football their recruitment department, I don't know what they're doing. Like
from a footballer's perspective, like that brand, like people aren't stupid. Like he's not being like, oh, look at that crest. And
I think you're wrong about that. I think the brand is very powerful.
Broken, by the way, it's cracked.
Like in what sense is the brand powerful for a player right now?
Well, if you are part of the team who brings it back, you are legend for all time. Like the team that won the league under Ferguson was legend for all time. It's like your Kerry team just broke a famine of 8 years. When the famine eventually breaks for Manchester United, that group we are all-time legends.
Of course.
Like there's a power in that.
Would you not let some of the other lads do the heavy lifting first, where you think,
yeah, exactly.
I'll just wait a couple of years to see how this project's working out, and then you jump on board.
This is 2 weeks before the deadline.
But I think that if you're Casemiro or somebody of that level, you can actually come in and go, right, Harry Maguire has to go out of the team, you've got to go out of the team, you've got to go out of the team, this is my team now, I'm the captain of Manchester United.
Like Ronaldo was supposed to do.
But Ronaldo was never going to do that because he's not at his peak. Casemiro, we're saying, is close enough to his peak.
Yeah, he's
29, 30.
Why can't Ronaldo do that if he's not at his peak? Like Ronaldo is Ronaldo. He's
because
one
he
of
was
the
on his way out, and he's nowhere near as good as he used to be, and he can't dominate games the way he was once capable of doing.
It's not about that though.
That's not his character.
He's playing in a better team though. He'd score he's still scored a rake of goals last season. He'd still score goals if they were a more functional team.
This is true.
Maybe someone from within changing, being the person to change the culture of the club. I think that's
Ten Hag is going to make a couple of good signings. If the Ten Hag era is going to work, he's going to have to make a couple of good signings, and those good signings have to come in and seize control of the team. Casemiro might be able to do that. Somebody of that standing would actually change the entire perception of everything around the club, and so that's why I think there's a power in that, and that's the dream you sell to him. That's what I would be doing.
It is a dream.
I think it's a tough sell though.
It is a tough sell. It is, but
Gotta get
these
your
footballers
best
are all.
sales pitch in there, I think.
Adrian Rabiot thinks he's the world's best footballer.
Yeah.
Do you know? Like,
But he's
not that hard to sell to people. You're the world's best footballer.
But he's sold, like, Rabiot has sold that to himself though. You got to sell this to Casemiro, who's looking like he plays with Luka Modric every day.
Yeah.
Imagine going from Modric to McTominay.
I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult. Right. That's today's deal.